Welcome to Subramani. How can you spend more in retirement? This sounds very too attractive and too good to be true, right? What I'm trying to say is we have all stuck to one rule called rule of 4%. In the US, this rule was made by one William Bengen or somebody. I'm not very sure about the name. And he said you could, if you withdrew 4% from your portfolio, you could do it perennially without having to worry. So this is called the 4% rule. Of course, afterwards we've all come out with theories, we worked on them, and we know there is something called the bucket theory. So you keep all your money which you want to spend over the next, say, 7 years, 8 years into bucket number 1 and bucket number 2, which is less volatile assets, like it could be your pension, it could be bank deposits, it could be annuities, it could be any of those liquid fund, money market fund kinds of stuff, and including some short-term income fund and long-term income fund, but largely not too much of assets which fluctuate. Now, many of us do spend more on discretionary than on necessary expenses. Let me just explain. The total expenses many people incur on their eating, day-to-day living, maybe about 5 lakhs a year, and their annual vacation expenses could be another 5 lakhs a year, right? Two husband and wife going on 2-3 vacations a year could cost that much. More importantly, if you decide to go on a European vacation or US vacation, it's not going to cost you less than 5 lakhs per person. So that means a year in which you are spending only 5 lakhs for your day-to-day expenses, which is your dal, roti, chawal, sabji, doodh, that kind of, and electricity bill and things like that. In a year, when you take a annual vacation to Europe, or I wouldn't call it annual vacation, a vacation to Europe, you're going to spend 10 lakhs, which is 2x your normal day-to-day expenses. How do you manage to take these expenses along with how do you plan for both? That's the question which we are asking. Planning for both your day-to-day expenses and your vacation expenses can be done in a particular way. You have created 3 buckets, right? Bucket number 1, bucket number 2, bucket number 3, where bucket number 3 contains all the equity and higher risk assets. Could even be gold, could even be real estate giving you rent, whatever. That is your bucket number 3. Now you could decide to create a bucket number 4, which is the discretionary expenses fund, which could be a multi-asset fund, right? So you put it in a multi-asset fund with equity treatment. You keep putting money into it. Whenever you have money coming in from X place, Y place, you have no clue from where you have got it, or you got the surplus somewhere, and you keep putting money into that, and you use that fund just for all your vacations or super discretionary expenses, right? So maybe even eating out, maybe going to see a Sound of Music concert in the Geo Entertainment Hall, right? Any of those things. You say, okay, this is discretionary, I need not incur it, I will not incur it, but however, this fund has got some excess money, so I will incur it. The other way to look at it is to look at where the index is. Let's say, suppose I'm looking at the Sensex. Today the Sensex is at 63,000. So you say, here is my portfolio, which is well hedged with the market, and as long as I am within 10% of the market highs, so 63,000 minus 6,000, I'm rounding off the 300. So as long as the Sensex is above 57,000, I will withdraw money from my equity fund and use it for my discretionary expenses. Here I am not withdrawing from my bucket number 1, bucket number 2, but straight I go to bucket number 3 and I withdraw and I use it for my discretionary expenses, right? Please make sure that you got enough surplus, right? 30 times your annual expenses is going to be tight. So if you have 60%, 60 times your annual expenses, obviously you're more comfortable. In such cases, discretionary expenses, you have more choice, but typically it also tells you when to withdraw from an equity fund, right? You have no reason to withdraw from an equity fund because you already have 10 years expenses lying in bucket number 1 and bucket number 2. So there is no need to withdraw from bucket number 3. So you say let it keep growing. But here is an excuse that you get saying, okay, all my discretionary expenses, which could be, if you think it's discretionary, it's discretionary. It could even be replacing a car, replacing a smaller car with a bigger car, whatever you want to do in retirement, right? Anything which you think is discretionary. You want to go to meet your daughter and you pay for the tickets yourself, that is discretionary. You want to buy some new equipment, some sports equipment worth 50,000-60,000 rupees, which you think is an indulgence. Well, that is discretionary. But at a time when the market is, suppose the market is at 69,000, you last seen at 63,000, now it's at 69,000. There is to be some excuse to withdraw from your bucket number 3. Here is your excuse. Go on a vacation, buy that extra equipment, that camera, lens, whatever you want to buy, a new bicycle, whether you want to buy a new motorcycle for 20 lakhs, that's a choice that I will leave it to you. But yes, all these are discretionary expenses which you can incur, provided of two things. One is when you say, okay, the market is now 10% more than the previous high that I have seen, so this is a great time to be investing, a great time to be withdrawing. But you also have to remember that if the market is less than 57,000, I'm assuming for a minute the index base is 63,000. If it is less than 57,000, I will not touch my box number 3, right? I will only withdraw from my box number 1 and box number 2, which provides enough money for my day-to-day living. I don't need to. So the discretionary expense looks very nice and interesting when you incur it. But you also have to have the discipline of saying, if the market is say 20% lower from the previous highs or 15% lower from the previous highs and is carrying you, that is the reason when you should not be withdrawing from your equity fund. Stick to bucket number 1 and 2, right? So there are 2-3 ways how you can incur these extra discretionary expenses. One is create a multi-asset fund and say I will keep putting money into it whenever I have a surplus. Whenever I see enough money in that for me to do something discretionary, I will do that from there. But my bucket number 1 and bucket number 2 continue to meet my day-to-day expenses. If your day-to-day expenses itself have got higher and you think the amount of money available in bucket number 1 and 2 may not be adequate for 5 years, then you withdraw from bucket number 3 and put it in bucket number 1 and 2. However, if you think the market is 20% lower from the previous highs that you had seen, then you don't withdraw. You wait till you come down to last 1 year expenses. That is a good time to start withdrawing and put some money from bucket number 3 to bucket number 1 and bucket number 2. But you may not come to that stage simply because bucket number 1 and 2 are also earning money for you. So see what works, but really discretionary expenses, if you can really be discreet, if you can really use your discretion and your wife and your family agrees with that discretion, then this is the way to use it.